Hello, good evening, and welcome to Equality Hour. And tonight we have a very exciting presentation. We have Jacqui Cottrell here from End Sexism in Schools. For those of you, I'm sure Jackie's going to explain the background to End Sexism in Schools, but it started several years ago, actually at the Women's Equality Party conference was the initiation of it, but it became an apolitical, non-political movement of volunteers looking at the curriculum in school and evaluating how gender unbalanced it is and what needs to be done. And they published a very important report a few years ago on, well, a couple of years ago on the English curriculum, which got a lot of traction in government and in education and elsewhere. And they've recently published a report on the history curriculum. So that's the particular thing that I've asked Jacqui to come and talk about. Welcome, Jacqui. Thank you for being here. And over to you to give us some more background and explain about the latest findings.
Thank you, Kay. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'll share what I can around everything that we have going on with End Sexism in Schools, or ESIS, at the moment, and then take some questions, etc. What I've sort of done is put together a little bit of a version of what we have for our introductory session when we get new volunteers, but trimmed down a little bit just to introduce it to everybody here. So, like Kay said, I am within End Sexism in Schools now. I sort of work as the volunteer coordinator within the now charity. So just pulling together all of the great volunteer work and bits and pieces. So the way that it tends to work at the moment is somebody will get in touch via the website, sort of a who are you? What is it that you're doing? I've found you. I want to know a bit more. And then we'll invite everybody along to a welcome meeting to start off with. For the welcome meeting, we'll tend to do a longer version of this presentation that I'll do with you, and then we'll onboard them through um, just a couple of references and a quick application form, and just see which of our exact current projects, etc., that people will sit within. So, like Kay said, End Sexism in Schools started from one of the members of the Women's Equality Party, Debbie, when she had some frustrations with her own kids' schooling, which I will get into. And it was really a case of her starting to realise that something wanted to be done differently. And like Kay said, the organisation has been around now for a few years, but we've been a charity since October 2024. So a very small charity, purely volunteer run. But really, what we're looking at doing is striving for a UK education system that is completely free of sexism. So the focus really is on, to be fair, at the moment, England and Wales, but just because of the most of where we want to work with is the exam boards. And what we're looking to do within that is work across the UK education system to make sure that there's better and equal representation throughout all different parts of the curriculum. Like Kay said, we started off with the English curriculum, then moved on to history, which I will do my best to cover off in detail with you all, but can share the download for you if you want it. And then this year, we're also looking at moving into science and sport as well, so that we can start to see again across the whole curriculum sort of how it's really working. So I'll give you a little bit of history first of all, like I said. So Debbie found that her children, her two boys, were, when they were in primary school, predominantly a lot of the clubs were run by teachers and were free for the boys to join, but any of the ones where girls were involved, it tended to be run by outside schools or outside organisations, sorry. Um, and they would they would tend to be run for fees, so they tend to be fee paying, whereas the ones for boys didn't tend to be. She particularly ran across some problems with the boys' football team practice, in that well, I say the boys' football team practice, the boys were fine, but it was the same teacher that did the boys and the girls' football practice. And if he was too busy, it was the girls' session that would get cancelled. Um, and one of the things that she then tried to do was get in touch with some of the existing organisations just to see what already happened, what they were doing, were they doing anything in schools, and sort of found that although there's an awful lot of work going on and a lot of things happening around, obviously, your violence against women and girl campaigns, gender pay gap, etc., none of the organisations that existed were specifically looking at changing the curriculum or changing anything within representation within the curriculum. And one of the big parts there was around, again, sexual harassment and what happened on PHSE and RSE lessons, rather than, again, getting down to the fundamental view of, if you're only ever seeing boys in the textbooks, if you're only ever seeing men being talked about and women are side characters, how will you ever have any sort of equality and equal across that one? The Fawcett Society had done a project on primary schools, but it was a one-off project. And again, it didn't really take it into any sort of detail in terms of changing the curriculum. But that's, like I said, the big focus that we want to have is making sure that the change happens across the curriculum as a whole. There's been quite a lot of talk over the last couple of years about making changes to the PHSE side of learning. Now, again, I'm not in school and I don't have children, so sometimes some of these are like, what happens in those? I remember RSE lessons from school, but they didn't cover anything really. What they tend to cover now, again, is there is more around things like consent and stuff like that, but there's the focus really, or the problem, particularly if any of you guys on the call are teachers, that one of the problems tends to be that PHSE lessons are non-experts teaching quite complex subjects in that particular area. And I mean, I've got some friends who are teachers. One of my best friends is an English teacher. She said one of the hardest things is being expected to go in and teach things that she has experienced herself, like sexual harassment or things that you might find, difficult or triggering. So actually asking teachers to teach that, A, is a part of a non-assessed subject, that probably I know back in my day there was a lot of messing around in those particular lessons. I imagine it probably still is, but that can be really difficult. And again, you've not got the dedicated space for it. One of the things that was proposed, I think in 2023 by Sadiq Khan, it might have been 24, was that you could get boys to step up as being allies for girls and do that through the PHSE lessons. But if grown men aren't standing up against, things that they see in the street every day, are young boys going to do that if they see, their friends calling names, etc. So we don't think that PHSE by itself is going to be the right place. It's a case of like that fundamental view across everything. So what we're looking at in terms of the mission overall for End Sexism in Schools is thinking about an environment without sexism, where people are taught a more gender balanced curriculum. It's free from stereotypes and from expectations, and it's free from sexual harassment and violence. Once we registered as a official charity, as I say, in October 2024, it means that you now align with one of the specific charitable objectives, or at least one of. And the one that we align most strongly with is the promotion of equality and diversity within the UK education and school system for the public benefit. That means doing things like advancing education, raising awareness of sexual discrimination, conducting and commissioning research, etc., on equality and diversity, and really just making sure that, again, the issues are raised so that we can then go and change something and do something about them. So the research has been a really big part of it, and like I said, and Kay mentioned, I'll go through briefly the headlines from the English report, and I'll go through the history report in a little bit more detail. But it's what happens next after these things. So one of the things most recently to come through was the curriculum assessment review. And as a result of that, ESIS have put a statement out around what we believe is limiting within that. The changes to the English curriculum, for example, that review of anything within English is being led by two white men, even after looking at all of our research and us saying, look, there's no women in the curriculum and we need a little bit more. So there's a long way to go with it. So the research is really important. We have got some support in Parliament. So Vera Hobhouse MP asks questions on our behalf quite regularly. We've also been able to link in with quite a lot of public spaces, public organisations and things recently. So hopefully it's becoming something that's a little bit more seen. When the English review was published, it definitely made waves and people were interested in talking about it. But we're a few years away from that now. And although we'll redo the research and see what's happening, like I said, the history report has been the most recent. And one of the useful things about the history report has been quite quickly getting historians and public historians on board as well and getting it talked about. So hopefully a few more people will become a little bit aware. of what's happening with it really. But yeah, when it comes to the report that we found for English, or so this is all available on the ESIS website as well. But so for Key Stage 3, and then GCSE, Key Stage 3 found that 90%, 99% of all the plays that are studies are authored by men. 77% of schools currently teach only one or no texts by female writers. If you attend a girls' school, you are more likely to study a text by a female writer, female author. But even then, it's not massively. So there's a little graph at the bottom. It's not hugely different, but you are more likely to do so. We also found that that didn't change across year group or across region. So again, when we went out to all the schools and found this information, we found it's fairly similar across all of them. And there is a 75-25% split at Key Stage 3 in terms of the choice of male and female authored novels. So say we published this in 2022. The English subgroup have been getting some more up-to-date information around it, but things haven't changed dramatically. It is a bit difficult to make very fast changes, partly because, like I said, it needs to come through the exam boards, because especially when you get to GCSE, we're not going to teach texts that are not going to be examined. There unfortunately isn't any point. But also, it just you've got at least a 2, if not a 4-year cycle of the texts as well, because of obviously how long the exams take and things. But so we're going to start to look at hopefully what will change from that one. But that's what was found at Key Stage 3. GCSE English wasn't any better. Again, 7 out of 10 of the texts had a male protagonist and were written by men. I remember when I first did my welcome call for ESIS being really surprised that we're still studying in inspector calls, because it feels like a long time since I was at school and I did that. Again, there's merit in a lot of the texts. They're taught for a reason, and we don't want to take away from the fact that teachers are really, really busy, and it makes a lot of sense that you teach the same thing regularly, because of course you've got your classroom notes and all the rest of it from that, but there's not a lot of variety. And again, it's the exam boards that don't allow really that to happen very much. One of the other problems with it, particularly at GCSE as well, so the image down on the bottom left, is that where there are female authored texts on the GCSE set lists, they tend to be almost twice as long as the male authored texts. So again, if you've got to get a group of 16, 17-year-olds to read a text, they're probably going to be choosing a shorter book than a longer one. So that also has an impact on there. It makes it less likely to be taught. So as I say, that one is ongoing for English, and we'll see what will happen next really around that one. When it comes to history, so like I said, we've just published the report. It was published in September. We managed to align the publication of the report at more or less the same time as when Kate Moss, the historian and author, released her book, Feminist History for Every Day of the Year. So Kate's done a load of really great promotion and all the things that she's been talking about. She's also mentioned ESIS for as well, which has been really nice. So she's sort of cited us in a lot of cases. There is an episode of the Guilty Feminist podcast out today that she talks about ESIS in as well. I haven't been able to listen to it yet because it launched today, but a few of the team were there when it was recorded last week at Camden Girls' School. And again, we've heard loads of really great stuff from that one as well. So I'm going to keep an eye on the volunteers inbox now that that one's gone out, and just see if we get any more people contacting us off the back of that one. It's really disappointing. You'll know this yourself, but we proved what we thought we were going to prove, which was that women weren't there in history. So we apparently haven't been around for the last few hundred years. I think we popped up, 20 or 30 years ago, or at least you'd think so from some of the research that was found. So in terms of the headlines, 59% of Key Stage 3, which is Year 9 history, features no women at all. They've got schools have got some flex when it comes to history at Key Stage 9. They can Key Stage 3 rather. They can sort of teach what they like. Some schools introduce women at this point, but the majority again don't, or they don't have anything specific within there. We've got a few history teachers now in our volunteer pool who are doing their best to go out there and sort of sneak content in at Key Stage 3, because again, it's not examined. But 59% of those history lessons, there's no women there. I don't know what we were doing throughout history. Only 12% of Key Stage 3 history lessons had women at all as part of the main focus. I was quite pleased to see that we do now teach about suffrage, because again, I don't believe that I got any of that when I was at school. However, 35% of schools teaching it don't teach the historical context to it. Those who do teach it, only 65% talk about the political campaigns before the 19th century, so there's no real context to it. Um, they are two of the suffragettes are two of the four named women that some schools do teach. So again, across all the information and the evidence that we were able to find, we did provide a list to the schools of women in history and say, do you teach any of these? And four women are taught from what we found. There's a couple of others that you can see in the appendix. Again, there are some schools that will pick one person in particular, but really you're looking at Elizabeth I, Mary I, Emmeline Pankhurst and Emily Davidson being the only women mentioned by name in any sort of history lessons, anything that's happening. We also found in terms of a lot of that, there wasn't, although they're mentioned in the history lessons, there's nothing then once you get to exam. So again, then there's no named women in most GCSE history questions, and 5% of schools in total taught anything around a named woman within that history curriculum. I was just gonna see if I can bring the full report up as well at this point, because I think it's got a little bit more on it for the web page. There we go. I did have it ready. So this is the full report, the Great History Heist, for women's place in the curriculum. So like I said, the headlines which I've just gone through with you there. There's a lot within it. Ultimately, what we're looking at doing within this one is trying to introduce named women to the history curriculum. I'll also say to prove that we were actually there throughout history. There's an awful lot around the particular named women, like I said, Elizabeth, Mary, Emmeline, and Emily, but again, not with any context or anything in particular being put within those. The view of ESIS really is that if we're not in the curriculum, if you can't see the impact that women have made in history, if you can't see the impact, or you're not talking about women protagonists in English, if you can't say who the discoverer of particular scientific methods and things is, then you're teaching boys particularly that girls don't count. And that's really what it comes down to in terms of trying to make sure it's a more fundamental balance in terms of that whole report and where we sit within or where equality sits within the curriculum as a whole, because you I've seen it on a few different things. You can't be what you can't see. And I think we see that an awful lot as you go into schools and into reports, like I said. So when she was interviewed by the Historical Novel Society, Kate actually said the quote that I've got there on the slide: the women and men built the world together. The writing of history, as opposed to the living of it, has often ignored or overlooked women's stories. If history is only the work of half the population, it can't really be called history at all. And that was what we found throughout the report. There's just no mention of the fact that, whilst the men were going off exploring, the women were keeping the home fires burning, or there's no acknowledgement of the discoveries of the work that women have done in a lot of it. In pockets, in some schools, there's really good knowledge and understanding. Unsurprisingly, again, it tends to be in girls' schools where there's an awful lot of it. The appendix is really good in terms of a lot of the women who are covered and who are talked about, because it can be quite like this. This is a list of that the other the teachers mentioned, or people that they mentioned that they were teaching. But again, there are a handful of schools that are teaching teaching any of these, and in a lot of cases, they're not mentioning women at all. Or the way I sometimes look at it as well is that you're talking about a woman who was significant, who made a big deal, but if you didn't make a big deal, you weren't actually there. So I'm not going to go through the entire report word for word because we'd be here all day, but also as well, like I said, the headlines really are what we had in terms of the findings, which is just that we're just not there. We're not being seen in the history curriculum at all. The big things now are a few of the history team. The long report is just about due to be published, so this is the abridged version. So there will be a little bit more when that one comes out, but we're now looking at the history teachers and the historians who we've got on the board, getting into some of the conferences for teachers, etc., and talking about getting women onto the curriculum a little bit more. But as I say, because most of what happens within a school is driven by what's going to be examined, we have to get the exam boards to make a change. So the publicity and the information that we're doing around um, people knowing who end sexism in schools are and knowing about the reports will mean that hopefully the next thing we can do, as I say, is have a look at the changes to the curriculum as a whole. Final probably port piece to just probably go through is just around some of the support that we are getting. So across the website we have author supporters and historian supporters. So a lot of the author supporters came on board after the English report. So we've contacted loads of really great, mostly women, but really great people who are all published, and they all support the work that we're looking at doing. And likewise, now that we've published the history report, we also have a brand new historian supporters page. So we are gradually getting a few more historians signed up on there as well. I said Kate hopefully will be one of them officially as an author supporter. We were hoping to get Greg Jenner, but unfortunately his contract prevents him being able to do it. So Greg Jenner is the guy behind Horrible Histories, if any of you have seen that, and BBC Ghosts. But really supportive of what we're doing, but his contract won't let him be a patron of the charity, unfortunately. But yeah, that's who we are and what it is that we look to do. So I know that's a bit of a whistle stop tour, but
I know it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Jacqui. I have read the report, but it's great to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, and really, really interesting and really frustrating, isn't it? And annoying. If we're not angry enough about what's going on in the world, then here's another thing to be angry about.
yeah, I think that's where the history is really important as well, because we're not seeing anything now across the world that we haven't seen already. And
Yeah.
actually, the lessons that we can learn from history, they've not been recorded properly, and we've not
So
looked at
much
where
to
we're
learn, isn't there? There
failing
is
at
so
that.
much to learn.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Brilliant. So let's open it up for questions or comments. Would anyone like to? You have a little raise hand button or a little react button in your Zoom menu if you would like to ask Jacqui any questions. I have one actually. Oh, go on.
I
Somebody
thought I
else.
was going to get off light then, and then you said
No,
that.
no,
Two
no.
hands up.
Okay, Kim, you're first. Go ahead. Take yourself off mute.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
So a couple of the blockers that you talked about there in terms of obviously getting to the exam boards, but then the inertia around, we've got lots of copies of this book or we've all learned to teach this book. Do you see the bigger inertia being the exam boards seeking to change or the teachers wanting to sort of stick to what they know, I suppose?
It's probably a little bit of both. And
Mm.
the trouble with the exam boards is they will listen to us, and they've taken the reports several times. They've been like, oh yeah, you raise a really good point. But the trouble with the exam boards, particularly across England and Wales, is because there's a multitude of them, one board won't change without the other boards changing, because what if that means that nobody chooses to go to ASA next time and they go to the other board instead? So
Got it.
that's been the difficulty that the team have been looking at the exam boards have found, is that you need to get that consistency that all the boards say that they will change, and at the moment they won't. Now we might get somewhere because there's a couple of other organisations looking at diversity, etc., who've been able to make a little bit of headway into some of the curriculum reports, but ultimately it won't change. They have to all agree to do something before anything will happen, and so you've got that.
Mm.
Teachers, I think there's a real mix, because I think the teachers who would be up for changing are probably already starting to introduce other texts and doing what they can. But again, they can't bring loads of new stuff on board if the exam boards are not going to have it. And, I don't know if any of you are teachers, but all the teachers I speak to have got not enough time in the day to go planning new lessons and things like that. So one of the things we are trying to do as part of it is create resources so that we can go, look, here's a great book, here's some resources. Does that help? And we've got loads of teachers on the, like I said, as part of the volunteers. But it's like it's a double-edged sword because you're not going to spend time prepping for something that the exam boards are not going to examine.
Yeah. No.
The inertia of the patriarchy, that's another thing that we're up agast, isn't it?
It's a nice quote,
Change
that.
takes a long time, yes.
Mm.
Karen, you're next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just think, I read a little while ago, Femina, a book about women in the Middle Ages, and some of our stories were lost because we were not allowed to write and be educated. So the stories that are out there are very few and far between. So again, it goes back through history, doesn't it? The fact that we have been deliberately wiped out of society of having any meaningful role. So it feels very deliberate at times, very intentional. And with the exam boards having various exam boards, and all of them have to change or none of them will change. It's just another block. But me being me and a parent of a 16-year-old, when we went to sixth form open evening, because my girls think about doing A-levels, I did do that thing of asking the English teacher what texts were read at A-level by female authors. And I deliberately did it when there was a few people at the table waiting. And she just looked and went, good point, not enough. But I think you do have an element of choice in A-level, don't you?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's, I know it's a big, but maybe something to keep at the back of your head for that further higher study as well. Because if we could infiltrate A-levels, would it be easier to work backwards rather than forwards? I don't know.
No, it's a really good
But I have got, but my girls popped up and had a look at one of your slides and popped back down again. I do think potentially her history teacher, Mrs. Guest at Bridlington School, would be a good point of contact. And you said that you're looking at sciences next.
Hopefully.
So I would be Dr. Gibson is the physics teacher at Bridlington School. She's clearly a very educated lady. Sorry, but she's working in a school because she's a parent and her children are primary school age. So I'm very acutely aware we've got her for borrowed time only, but I think she would be a good person potentially for the science review.
Thank you. I've made a note of those. And I think the other thing as well, and where parents can help, is getting the reports out to teachers. I mean, they're there, they're published, but we're busy people. So it's very possible that, again, these will have been passed by. We have emailed every school, or we are going to be emailing them all again, but we've all got copies of them in hard copy as well. If anyone wants to contact me and give me an address, I can send a hard copy of the report or get one sent out to some of the schools if they've not had them. Because I think sometimes the nice physical printed version of the book does something as well. But yeah, Karen, I read Feminista as well, and you're spot on. The number of, well, it literally been erased in a lot of cases, and that's where we've got to put the narratives back in.
Yeah, and I have quoted it before when I was employed. I'm now self-employed, but I did some training about equality, transgender, and I actually used that book because, again, in the Middle Ages, there was somebody that may or may not have been male or female who was working as a barmaid, but also working as a prostitute and would service men and women and would dress either way. But it's a tiny, tiny piece of information. So actually, people just being themselves has always been there, but never documented or given a specific name. So being transgender is not new. Being gay is not new. It's always been there, just never recorded.
course,
but
it's not only
not in the
sexism
literature.
it's not only sexism we're talking about in schools, is it? A lot of people have been erased from our history, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's a really good point. Jane, you were making a comment in the chat. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Jane's
Hi
question.
there. Yeah, hi everyone.
There you go.
Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Jane. Yes, perfectly.
Hi. Yeah, so I just wondered if Sandy Toksvig is sort of aware of this and whether she, with her Mappa Mundi project, where she's trying to do a Wikipedia, isn't she, of women in history in different cultures as well.
Do you know, I don't know if we have engaged her, and which is another reason, a really good reason to come along and talking to you guys as well, you all as well, because one of the things that we're getting all the history support, well, the newer volunteers to do as well, is off the back of Kate's books. Like I said, Kate Moss's is Feminist History for Every Day of the Year. And I am getting to your point, one of the questions she was asked on one of the radio shows was, how did you choose those women? And she was like, well, you're right, because there's thousands of them and I had to pick 365. So we're doing a bit of a follow-up project on when we get a new volunteer, we ask them to go and research a woman in history who's important to them, so that we can who's not in Kate's book, and we can continue to build that narrative out. What I hadn't done is thinking about that project. In fact, it came up on another call for something different the other week, and I was like, what's the name of the project? I can't remember it anymore. So thank you, Jane, because that's been really helpful. But I will see, and I'll ask the rest of the team as well, and I'll come back to you on whether or not we can do anything with that one, because I know it was something Sandy had started, but I'd understood that she'd paused it for the time being, but I might be making that up.
What's Kate's
Oh,
book
right.
called again? What's the book called?
Feminist History for Every Day of the Year.
Yeah. It sounds a
I would-
bit like On This Day She. Do you remember that one by Elsa Dixon, who lives near here
Yeah.
in Macclesfield? And that group of women, three of them, they tweeted every day on this day, this woman did this and this woman. So that was eventually published as in a book called On This Day She. And it's a similar idea. There's a page for each day of the year, but I will have a look at Kate's book as well. And to the point that you were making earlier, I think it was Karen made it, that obviously who was writing the history was a really important component. And I'm just reading a book, I don't know if anybody's read it, called The Restless Republic by Anna Key, which is an amazing history book about the 10 years when England was a republic, obviously 1650s and 60s. And she writes about lots of people, ordinary and otherwise, who were involved in that time of incredible turmoil, actually, in this country. And she features a lot of women, some of whom were powerful, some of whom were thought to be, mediums, some of whom were rich, some of whom were poor. And it just goes to show that it must have been hard to do the research and to get the information, but it just goes to show that if you want to write, a history with all the people in there, you can. And it's a great book, and she's had loads of plaudits for A Restless Republic. If you're interested in history, it's a great read. It's written almost like a novel. It's gripping, and it's really great to read. So yeah, thank you for that suggestion, Jane. I don't know where that project of Sandy's is up to either. Any other questions or comments? Well, gone quite quiet. I had a thought as you were speaking, Jacqui, because you're quite right that teachers have got so much on their plate at the moment, and now we get huge traction when we go in to do white ribbon talks and things. You know what you were saying before about PSHE, they're not experts in these matters. They're not experts in misogyny and all that, and they're expected to go coach young people, and it's right out of their comfort zone for a lot of teachers.
On that, my friend is a survivor of a sexual assault, and she has to go in. She has to talk to kids about what to look out for and how to do it. She said it's really, really hard. She doesn't get training or support on how to do that.
Yeah. It's
I'd
hard.
never thought about
It's
it
hard,
like that.
yeah. But exactly. But our white ribbon ambassadors go into both primary schools and high schools, and the teachers are so grateful, and they think they can see it's so important, and they realise that that it's not something that they find easy to do at all. In a way, it's almost easier to bring in a visitor to do it. And another thing to make it easy for teachers, I'm involved in a group around the country called Visible Women, which is putting up statues of women all over the place. And we've had Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Pankhurst and you name it, lots and lots of different ones. Aphra Behn, talking of writing, the first novel in the English language was written by a woman, by Aphra Behn. And there's a campaign to put up a statue to her. And anyway, so I'm in touch with all.
We've just had a statue up in Hinckley of a woman finally. Ava Lovelace is outside our college.
Ava, there's yes, Ada Lovelace is there. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Ada Lovelace is just outside our college, so that's good. That's useful to know in that one because we were talking about how we can link again the history, women in history, to a statues project as well. So I will look into that one.
Yeah, so Ada's one of my heroines because, of course, she was a mathematician like me and invented computer programming. Anyway, but so lots of women and the paleontologist at what was her name? Mary Anning. There was a movie made about her with Kate Winslet. So she's standing in Lyme Regis now, and I know the woman that put that one on. Anyway, so it's a really great group. But one of the things that our group here in Congleton did when we got our statue of our suffragist Elizabeth Elmy is we had a teacher who was in our group, and she made materials for the local schools. So we have. I'm going to show you very briefly. So here we have, this is the high school materials that she made, and it's just a lesson basically.
Yeah.
And that's the very statue. And then there's some worksheets, there's some exercises, think about what's fair and what's not fair, so kind of making various, and there's a primary school one as well. So she actually made some lessons. So the only way to make teachers change is to actually give them what they need on a plate.
They haven't got time to go and do the research and to create it all. Absolutely.
So she did the research, she made the lessons, she took it into the school, and now we get kids, they come and visit the statue in town. Quite often you'll see a class of them, and they're going to go back to school, and then they use the materials to have the lesson. And it's and what a wonderful thing to do. It's quite a simple thing to do. So I guess as a group, in your local area, if you have a woman that you think should be in the history books, when it's local context like that, obviously teachers really like teaching about local history. Is something that they do. It is kind of gender agnostic, it's just one of the subjects, isn't it? So if there are more women that you learn about, then they'll be in your local history curriculum. So that's something that we could do if there's anywhere where you live that there's a woman that should be taught in school. Then just find a friendly teacher and give them the material and say, turn that into some lessons. And that's a small way that we can all help. But I can see that it's quite a challenge to do it on a national level. So Jane's saying the OU recently published a case study with clips of Jenny Lee's strategy in getting the Open University established, a great resource. Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they've just commissioned a statue of Jenny Lee in Milton Keynes. And if you go and look at the recordings that they did, the OU, they are so clever because she had to really sort of play the system, to get the funding. It's really interesting. I'll see if I can dig it out and send it to you. See if I can find it.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. And Abby obviously said there's a lot doing at various universities to decolonize the curriculum and the history.
Universities seem to be doing a really good job. Again, probably because they've got a bit more control over what they can and can't do versus schools. And it's amazing the number of people who are coming along to ESIS and saying, university showed me so much more than what I'd been shown at school because they can break out of the curriculum and stuff. Sorry, Abby.
Yeah.
No, that was it. But I know a few people who are doing it for their science parts. So I could put them in touch if you're finding that.
I think we've got a contact bit on the website for people to get
Okay.
in touch and sort of sign up and sign up to the newsletter if they want to, and or just let us know about any details, etc. Science we probably won't look into the research on science until probably 2027, because sport is written for this year, and again there's not that many volunteers, so by the time you've gathered all the data and pulled it all together, it takes a bit of time. But we want to get something on the website around science at the very least, because again, if you are a science teacher or the parent of a child who is very interested in science and you go to our website at the moment, you won't see anything. So we probably won't do anything research wise on there just yet, but we definitely want to get a page on the new website when that launches. So please do direct friends, family, children, teachers to the website. Again, the newsletter is really good for a little bit of resource, a little bit of information, and keeping people informed. But the resources that you were just talking about there, Kay, that's what we need to, or we're going to hope to try and gather more of, so that we can make it easier for teachers, that there are, easy lessons there to find. But
Yeah.
it's a community project, so the more people, the merrier to sort of send us stuff and get
Absolutely,
involved.
absolutely. So did you say it's sport that you're doing this year and science
I
next?
think we're about to launch some research into sport for this year. Yeah, so it'll be things like what puts girls off sport, because we know that they are put off. Whether or not, again, do they have equal opportunity within schools? And again, it's not necessarily all about can girls play football, as a terrible example, but one of our local schools, they've got a few boys who want to play netball and they're not allowed. So again, it's about, what are they open to? What are they allowed to do? What are they able to do? So yeah, I think the sports research is due to launch in the next couple of months. I'm not entirely sure where Sarah's up to with getting that project started, but that's going to be the next big piece of research, will be that one.